Okay, we're now recording. Over to you, Sylvia.
Okay, great. So just a little bit of background about myself. I am master's degree qualified in strategic human resource management, and I've got over 15 years experience in wider HR matters, primarily including talent acquisition, talent branding, leadership development, and relocation, etc. So I work across wider sectors as well, and more recently so in oil and gas and mining. So here I am trying to provide my support as much as I can from everything I've learned, coaching hiring managers and talent, and preparing and helping them with their CVs, profiles, and interviews. So the session, you know the agenda, but I'll go through it quickly. The key thing, I think everyone asks common questions: how to write an effective resume, is my resume the best, how to stand out. We'll look into top tips about LinkedIn profile, and then we were talking about interview, but obviously there are differences between phone and video interview versus face-to-face interview. It's relevant to the current market, so I will cover phone and video interview tips and what hiring manager wants as a top tip. There's lots of things, but we'll cover the top tips, and then we'll go into Q&A session. Okay.
And Sylvia, can I just jump in and say, because there's a smaller audience today in comparison to yesterday's one, we probably have a little bit of time for each person on the call just to give a 30-second introduction into themselves, what their current position is, and what they're looking to get out of the session, so that obviously when you're speaking through your slides, you know the kind of points that are most interesting for them. So could we do that, please? And I'll kind of do the name call, but we'll just get every person to introduce themselves and what they're looking to get from this session. So if I start with Abdul first.
Hi, my name is Abdul Salam. I previously worked as a business process controller, and right now I'm looking for the new role. And I thought this session will help me on CV improvements and interview capabilities and like that, skills to develop.
Okay, thank you, Abdul. And Antonio, if you could go next, please.
Hi, my name is Antonio Carrasso. At the moment, I'm a technician in an international company, and I'm looking for a new position as project manager. So I'm very interested on how to review my profile, my CV, and I'm working on that at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. Bernard, if you could go next, please.
Hi, I'm Bernard. I have a BSc in project management, and I've been in PMO and project coordinator roles for a while now. But for the past year, I've been working in events and program management as a support person, and I'm looking into entering or getting back into projects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bernard. And Jay, if you can go next, please.
Sure. So name is Jay Malu. Basically, I guess the title says all, because I'm looking into like how best to market, how to make the CV more effective, or sort of like, rebrand your profile to be able to be more marketable.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, it's just the order I see on my screen. I'm not picking on you, Nish, but if you could go next, please.
Yeah, okay, so my CV and my LinkedIn profile is out of date by almost 3 years now, so I'm hoping to get some tips and motivation from this session to update both.
Okay, thank you. And Sylvia, yeah, I mean, you've covered what you do and you'll be covering in this session, so over to you. Sorry for the interruption.
So the first agenda item is how to write an effective resume. So I'll cover the key guide, how you can start, and if you're stuck and you don't know what to do. It is so important, especially if you've been made redundant recently, to consider it carefully, because well-crafted resume shows employers that you are in the right mindset to get back to work. So as I said, if you're stuck, the first and foremost thing, you need to consider compiling a complete CV in one document that contains everything. I call it historical CV, and you might find someone also saying historical CV, where you can put all the volunteering, you can put all your all trainings, all freelance jobs, everything you did in there. Make sure that you start, and the first and foremost key thing is that you put your name. Don't waste time calling it CV. Some people do curriculum vitae or resume. Your name is your brand, and so that's the key name of the document. And make sure you've got your contact details, etc. So once you've got everything in one document, that's when you go into stage 2, which is creating an application-specific CV. You need to build shorter and relevant resume. So your complete CV might be 5-10 pages, right? So it's good to have that, but you cannot send that. You cannot submit for a job when you're applying for a job. You have to make it application specific. So as I said, it needs to be shorter and relevant. So I will come back to this slide, but I've created a kind of a document to give you guidance what it might look like and what you need to consider. So by all means, this is not the template I'm suggesting to use, but I just put this template together to say that what are the key things you need to cover. You can choose whatever template suits you, but try to not to use templates that take up a lot of space in your CV because of different formatting, etc. Make sure that you utilize the first page because it's the most critical page, and so the structure should be your name. You can put your contact details. If you add the URL for your LinkedIn, which we'll talk about it when we talk about LinkedIn, please copy and paste there as well. Now, the first section should be your summary of your qualification. Some people call it summary, some people call it personal profile. So it should be 4 to 5 bullet points to highlight the most relevant skills for the jobs you're applying for. 4 to 5. So do not write the essay half page. You need to be able to summarize this section. To help you how to summarize it, I've put the questions: who you are, what can you offer to the company, and then what are your career goals. You could say things like, I am degree qualified, or if you don't have a degree, what do you call yourself, what benefits you bring, you have track record in doing what industries you cover, and what is it that you're going to help to, what solutions you're going to provide to the companies, why they should consider you. And this is an important section because you have to tailor it for each job you're applying, because it helps the employer focus on your best qualification quickly. And just remember when you're applying for the jobs, and I think it came out in the sessions yesterday, I've done everything. I've got the right, I've written the CV in the right format. I've done my LinkedIn in the right format, but I'm not getting the job. So remember, when you're applying for a job, there are thousands of applicants depending on the job. And I remember when one of the common jobs in the airline industry is the air hostesses or stewardesses, and one job window, it crashes the system. Thousands and thousands of applicants. How do you make sure you can get the job? You can be upset if you don't, but the key thing is that your summary of your qualification should cover exactly, because those recruiters who are looking at your CV, they're only spending 2 seconds looking at your CV. You need to capture their attention in that section so they can look and they would want to be interested to read the rest of your CV. So that's about the summary of qualification. And then you should include your professional experience. Some people call career history, work experience, whatever you want to call it. Should have your job title, should have your company name, and should have your the location. So if you're only working within the country and applying within the country, you don't have to put the country name, just put the city. However, if you're international and relocating, make sure that you put the country in the city. You don't need to put your own address where you put your name. It was requirement before. These are the 2020 tips, so please do not put your address. It's not a requirement, and you shouldn't be putting the company addresses either. So, and make sure that you put the date. So here you can put anything, both paid and unpaid jobs, part-time jobs, freelance, volunteering, whatever is relevant. So and what you need to do in here, you put your key activities and accomplishments. Please make sure you do not copy and paste job description. If the job description you were in the job, a lot of people when they start a new job, they copy and paste what the job description says, your key requirements, and this is my role and responsibilities. That is not what you need to put in there. You need to talk about what you achieved, and make sure you use past tense for the jobs you did in the past. And if this is the current and present, you need to use that I am delivering, I am heading, I am running, or whatever you're doing in the past, in the present tense. And so on. You can have 10, 13 jobs. They say to keep it short, 10 jobs. It's a different advice different people give. So if you had 20 companies, you probably want to go into details the maximum to 10, depending how much achievements you're putting in there. And we talk about the length of the CV. You must make sure that your CV fits within the 2 pages, and then the rest you can put as the key highlights at the end. And then you go into your education. Just before I talk about education, please make sure that you list your experience in the reverse chronological order, as your recent role is the most relevant role. Now, I'm sure you probably, guys, none of you do that, but trust me, I've seen many CVs where people start with their first job they started and then they walk their way up. So it is very frustrating. No one interested in that going through, especially if people have 4 or 5 pages. You're already losing a chance someone looking at it. They want to know, what are you doing now? Have you got the experience to do? Most of the employers looking for people who are already doing what they're doing. So you must show that what you're doing currently. And then the same for the education. Start with your top latest recent education, and then all go all the way back. If you don't have a education from a degree from a qualified university or anything, so put your professional associations. And then you talk about your skills. This part is quite important. Here you talk about anything like fluency in languages, if it's requirement on the job, transferable soft skills. This section, the skills section and the summary of qualifications are the 2 sections that you're going to be tailoring for the jobs you're applying. Your work experience, education will always stay the same, so long as you highlight the key achievements you've achieved. But the skills and the summary qualification, now you may choose to put skills before education, because if you think that your skills are more important, add value to you than your education. Or some people prefer to put the skills before their professional experience, right after summary of qualification, because you think that that's most relevant for the employee you want them to see. So whatever you think that you want them to see on the first page, immediately utilize that space for that. Now, please, 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 when you're doing your skills section, do not write multiple skills. If you are a project manager, already at the project manager, you're saying that you've driven a project and you successfully delivered it. You don't need to show that you have experience, say, in something that's obvious you should have, like Office, Microsoft Office, etc. Use the skills that are required for the job that are really critical. If you are Prince 2 qualified, show that there as a skill. So I would say, do not list every skill you have. If languages is not required there, you don't need to put the language as a skill there. So I'm just saying to utilize that space, you need to put the key 4, 5 key skills that you could, which are relevant for the job that you're applying for. Okay, now if I go back to the slide, so hopefully I'll ask questions in a minute, but just before I finish about the CV, I want to give you top tips to remember. You must make sure that before you submit your CV, you tailor your summary and personal profile and skills, whether you call a summary or personal profile and skills section to every job you're applying for, okay? You must make sure that your summaries remain short and sweet, and it's no longer than a few sentences or a few bullet points, 4 or 5 bullet points. I mentioned this already. Use past tense for the jobs you did in the past, and present tense for your current job. Take keywords from the job description. If you're stuck, how do I tailor my summary and skills? Use the job description. What are they looking for? If they're looking for Prince 2 qualified project manager, have you shown that in your skills that you've got the Prince 2 qualification? And that's what you need to make sure. You don't need to go into other different skills that are not required for the job. So make sure that those skills are there. the standard length of the CV in the UK is 2 pages. It might be different in some countries, but it is for UK is 2 pages. But make sure that it's never longer than 2, maximum 3 pages. And in many countries, it's common practice to include a photo of yourself on your CV, but UK is not one of them. So you're not required to put your photo there. Do not include your age, date of birth, marital status in your CV. It's actually illegal for employers to ask in many countries. So even if someone asks that, so you should know your rights. And anything is irrelevant or outdated, please remove it, because no one is interested reading what you did. You know, if you've already progressed, you want to show the relevant information of the type of jobs you're applying for. It is your brand. It is the story you're telling about yourself. But at the same time, at level you want to position yourself, that needs to be taken into consideration to make sure that you find the right balance. So before I move on into anything, I think this has covered quite a lot of topics around the CV. I'd like to ask anyone if they have any questions.
Yep. So Sylvia, that was great. If I could pose one question to you, which is come in the chat, and I'll paraphrase it. So essentially, if someone has a CV which is 4 or 5 pages long, okay, 6 pages long, I've actually seen one that was 10 pages long, but you're suggesting they should be 2 to 3 pages. However, they believe in some of that work that they did 15 years ago, whenever it was, there's relevance, okay, and therefore they've put in lots and lots of material in their CV. In that circumstance, would you still recommend that it's on 2 to 3 pages? And how do they get there? How do they decide what they strip out and how they make their CV 2 to 3 pages?
Yeah, so I think it is a very good question. It's an ability to be able to summarize or present yourself. Imagine you had 20 seconds to present yourself, and they're selecting people in the 30 seconds. What are the key things you're going to say to the hiring manager to, like, they're not going to go through 5-10 pages. It's important to know that no one is going to go through your 5-10 pages CV. If you weren't able to capture what you want them to capture in the first 2 pages, that's already a problem. So you might want to show that you've got track record doing project management. You started delivering large scale projects, say 15 years ago, and you're still doing the same. Somehow you summarize it and put it there. You don't have to put the line by line deliverables you've achieved in each job. And I think that's the skill that people need to master. It's important that you have that ability to be able to strip out the information that is not necessary. Is that information that you're putting that you've done 15 years ago going to make you help you to get a job, a secure a job? That's the question you need to ask yourself before you decide what information needs to go out.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just give a note from my own personal experience. So I've been in IT now for approximately 25 years, so also have a long history, a long background. I could easily have a CV which is more than 3 pages. My CV is 3 pages. What I've done for some of those roles from 20 years ago, where, you know, I could easily believe that they're significant, right? The work that I did in that role 20 years ago was great. I'm so proud of it. I kind of want to mention it on my CV, but all I do is just mention the role by the year and the role I did, not have any other information there, but the skills or the achievements that I feel I achieved in that role 15, 20 years ago, I just put a couple of bullet points in my skills section. So then if someone asks me, well, what did you do in that role from 15, 20 years ago? We see no detail there. I use my skills or refer to the skills section or achievement section as the examples of the things that I achieved. So I completely agree with you. I know it's tough. I know it's not always easy to get on 2 or 3 pages, but you know, I agree with you, Sylvia, that that's what is best. And a recruiter or a hiring manager won't look at the 4th page or the 5th page or the 6th page. But anyway, so that's one. Hope that answers the question. Let's just open it up to see if there's any other verbal questions or discussion points people want to raise with you before you go on to your next slide. So any other questions for Sylvia from anyone? And remember to unmute yourself if you need to.
Hi, good question. I wanted to ask, is it good to have your outside work activities on your CV, like what you do outside work. Because outside, for me, outside of work, I do a lot of volunteering. That was one of the reasons why I was recommended for my role with the National Council for Voluntary Organizations. But the thing is, adding that to my CV makes it more than 2 pages. So I was wondering if that is really relevant.
And volunteering is important to add. It shows that, it shows your style, how supportive you are, and it just adds to your track record, absolutely. So, and how you add it is important. So maybe you want to show more information because that's going to get you the job than the job you're doing. So just find the right balance, which information you want, which information is going to help you the job. So yes, put volunteering in there. But if you're doing one project here and every day you're doing different jobs, try to make sure that you can capture it in a short and sweet manner to show that you are doing volunteering. You've been doing it for the last 5 years. This is what you've achieved through doing that project. This is the type of this is the value you've added to community, or whatever you're doing. I think it's very, very good point to add.
Bernard, in my experience, when I have seen people put volunteering or other interests in a relevant way on their CV, it's normally still in only 2 or 3 lines. So if you're taking up more than 2 or 3 lines for volunteering, it's probably unnecessary, unless, as Sylvia mentioned, the role that you're going for actually will really make use of that volunteering expertise, or will really like it. But that's you tailoring your CV to one particular role. So that's, as Sylvia was mentioning, maybe on your historical CV, on this bigger CV that has all of your information, but then you tailor it down to 2 or 3 pages for that particular role that you're applying for. And it may or may not be relevant to include any information on volunteering on that more tailored CV.
Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Any other questions or discussion points someone wants to raise with Sylvia? Okay, yep. Sylvia, if you could carry on then, please.
Okay, now we're going to go into LinkedIn. So what are the best tips around using LinkedIn? So I would like to stress that treat your LinkedIn as a living asset. So what I mean by that, some people update their LinkedIn and don't. I think Nish, you mentioned earlier that you haven't updated your LinkedIn for a while, and it's you're not alone there. Quite a lot of us are in the same situation. It's so important that you constantly update your LinkedIn. If you deliver a successful project, showcase it in your LinkedIn. If you won an award, showcase it on your LinkedIn. You could recently completed a new course, training, got a certification, update it, stay up to date, and actively join different groups, participate, so that you are noticed. So it's your asset, it's your brand, it's who you are, and it's the first thing recruiters and employers look for, even after receiving your resume. So the other thing you need to do to make sure that you stand out and you have the right LinkedIn profile is optimize your headshot on your LinkedIn profile. A lot of people have a picture distance of their full body, or in some kind of, some people have inappropriate pictures like they would have on their Facebooks, etc. Make sure that you have a professional photo on your LinkedIn. Now, you don't have to go and pay for professional photo. You can take a good headshot picture on your mobile and upload it. The other tip is customize your URL to stand apart and appear unique. I don't know how many people know about this, but on LinkedIn, you have an option to edit your URL and put your name. So if you're running your own company, you could utilize that. Or you could put your name, and just bear in mind that your name might be already taken by another person, but feel free to add your middle name in there or add another digit or something so that it's short and sweet. Because when people find you on LinkedIn and they share your LinkedIn link, sometimes it can come really, really long and 3-4 lines. And if you've done that, it does look professional. So once you've done your headshot and The other thing that will stand you out is your headline. It's so important. You just need to remember that you have 120 characters that you can use in this headline and to describe your work, so use them wisely. What you can include there, you can include keywords prospects will use. So when I say prospects, I'm talking about recruiters, hiring managers, to hire people who have the same skills as you. Ensure it fully represents you and your work, and that and then that you cover common problems your prospects face. So if you are a web designer, show it there. You're a web designer, and available, show it there. Because when you got to remember, a lot of recruiters use Boolean search within LinkedIn to search for people who have skills like yourself. So they might put project coordinator as a skill, and they're filtering by location, and they could say, I'm looking for project coordinators in the UK in finance industry. So your name will come up, but it brings a list of, maybe they'll have thousands of different applications. Try to run that search yourself, okay? You will see, look for a job title that you want to apply, put that in the filter for job search, and then by location, you can look for candidates, and you'll have thousands of different people, and you will see you don't have time, and you're not even interested to go, and this recruiter is working multiple roles. They will be going by whoever headline just captures exactly what they're looking for. Okay, so that's so important. So they probably will select 10, 20 based on the headline. Yes, he's got the project coordinator. It shows that he's in the right industry and he's in the right location. So just bear that in mind. That will give you increase your chances to be selected, to be even considered by the recruiters for the role. So the next thing, once they open your LinkedIn, they've seen your headline and they clicked on it to open, they're going to spend again another 20 seconds maximum and reading your summary. So do not write long summary. You don't need to write a full story, but you could use keywords. So just you can include what you do, why you do what you do. It should answer questions. So what? Just saying that I'm a consultant. So what? How can this benefit me as a recruiter? How can this person solve my problem? So I wrote an example here. Instead of saying consultant, you can say, I help clients eliminate speed bumps in the workflows and optimize their proficiency. Now, this is just an example. It could be anything. But utilize that space wisely, and make sure that you represent who you are, what you're doing, and what you can do to help the organization, just why they should consider you. Very brief and very catchy. So some people also use a short video to introduce themselves. So it again explains who you serve, problems you solve, and how to contact you. Include a compelling title to describe the key title, and the description could be keywords to describe the video. So because it will be searchable. Just remember, whatever you put in your headline, whatever you can put the same story continues in your summary. You said you're a web designer. You make sure that in the summary you said, I'm a web designer who can do this and this. And the video again, web designer introduction. So the more you repeat the type of words, keywords that you think you're applying for, the type of job you want, the more chances you'll be searchable. You'll come up on the Boolean search. The next, make sure that your work history and education is up to date. Make sure that your CV and LinkedIn match, and there is no career gap. If on your CV you're showing that you had a career gap and you weren't working, on your LinkedIn you're covering up with somehow, just remember that they're going to compare both. So make sure that you are honest about your work history, education, and don't have gaps in any of the LinkedIn or CV profile. If you have a gap and you haven't been working, be honest about it. So you can include your training, education, and work history. It is important you put demonstrate there, and to demonstrate the longevity, experience, reliability, and everything that contributed to your success. Now, some of asked yesterday, I will have a generic CV, but you know, I would then tailor my CV to for a job. But can I have a generic LinkedIn? By all means, yes. Please make sure that you have everything in your LinkedIn that you've done and you want to showcase, but have tailored CV for the jobs you're applying for. The other thing is important for your CV and as to your credibility is obtain recommendations. If you don't have any recommendations on your LinkedIn, please ask any old colleagues. It could be, if you're just recently started your career, it could be even someone you work with in a project in a university, or it could be a customer. Bernard, for you, could be, for example, through volunteering, someone you've helped and supported, they can write a review about you. So you'll be surprised how people would be responsive and happy to express their gratitude. List your certifications. It positions you as a trusted resource, definitely. So these are my top tips, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sylvia. And just for everyone on this course, so this area, I think, generated the most questions on yesterday's session that Sylvia provided. So if, you know, so don't hesitate, right? So you've seen the stuff that's on the screen. LinkedIn is obviously a big area. You must have multiple questions you're thinking about. Either ask them now verbally or put them in the chat session and I'll raise them on your behalf. So does anyone have a question for Sylvia that they would like to mention verbally?
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when in the interview we are starting with explaining the experience, which order we need to go? Like with most recent one, or with the beginning of the whatever we are doing, like background of. So how we can start in the interview?
Sorry, is that a related question?
So Abdul, can I just understand? So is this in the interview or for your LinkedIn profile that you're thinking?
In the interview, I mean to say.
Okay, because the interview, I'm aware that Sylvia is going to cover that in her next slide anyway, in terms of what the hiring manager is looking for and tips. But perhaps she could answer that question, if I've understood it correctly, in that even in your LinkedIn profile, what order to comment on your experience. So is it the more recent one or some of your background information? I know you've covered this already, Sylvia, but if you could just touch on that again in terms of the chronological order, and then perhaps cover that in the interviews hiring manager section as well, in terms of how you give an update on your background or your recent.
Okay. So I'll hold into your question about the interview. How do I answer that question in an interview? But in terms of your LinkedIn and your CV, make sure that it starts from your recent job and goes all the way to your to the first job. So your recent job should be at the top for your LinkedIn and for your CV. For an interview, how you answer the questions and what would be the best practice, we can cover when we go for the interview section. If that helps and answers your question, Abdul.
Yes.
Okay.
Quick question, guys. So if I get what Sylvia is saying, your LinkedIn profile should be like your historical CV, if that makes sense. It should be kind of like a representation or a skeleton of your historical CV. Is that right?
I'm not quite saying that, but I'm trying to say that it's your brand. How do you want people to see it? It's what story you want people to know. Remember, everyone can look you up. Everyone can see you. Don't, you know, if you've done any work anywhere, capture that there. You don't have to. When I say historical CV, you might put information that you probably wouldn't want to put on your LinkedIn. You know, so that's guidance. Historical CV, it's your guidance. But in terms of the work history and education, please make sure you capture everything correctly. In terms of the skills, you might have different skills you want to capture on LinkedIn, all certifications. And in summary, you might want to write a bit more, whereas applying for a job, you need to be more tailored and focused to a particular job. So it's kind of yes or no to your question, but it is how you present yourself as a brand.
Okay, just a follow-up here. So let's say I see a role I apply for, I tailor my CV to the particular role. but the hiring manager goes on LinkedIn and goes to see my brand and sees that my CV is different from my LinkedIn profile. Don't you think that will come out as being dishonest?
I'm not asking you to be dishonest. You must make sure that you're honest. I'm not saying to lie in your CV or in your LinkedIn. You must make sure that you don't have any gaps and they match. However, when you are applying for a job, you must make sure that why you feel, it's like writing, when you write cover letter for a particular job, you focus and highlight the skills you have more relevant for that job. And that's why I'm saying that tailor your skills and summary to the job, and it's not to, to lie or say things that you're not doing. So by all means, you're not allowed to do that, and you have no chances of getting job if you're not honest about your CV. So your LinkedIn is more generic, but you validate the points on your CV, tailored CV, relevant for the job when you apply for the job.
Okay.
Do you want to add something on that as well?
No, I think you covered it. When you were saying this yesterday anyway, you were saying about your LinkedIn being more generic, but covering all the points. But, they don't need to know all of the detail that's in your CV. Otherwise, your LinkedIn profile will be huge. And that would also stop you from being able to tailor your CV for each job, right? So I think you covered it, but I'm emphasizing it. So generic LinkedIn, but tailored CV. But your LinkedIn has to match your CV. Yeah, Bernard, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes much more sense now. Thank you, guys.
So Bernard, I'll just bring an example. I'll just take myself as an example. I may have recommendations that showed that I started doing project like early in my career. I was a part of the project and I was doing projects, but I'm not selling myself as a project manager at all. You may see that I have Prince 2 qualification as well, at least foundation certification. I've listed that there, but that's not what I'm selling in my LinkedIn as a key thing. That's something I've done. It's there. It's recorded. In my CV, I don't even put it as a skill. I don't put it in my summary. That was one of the achievements, because it's not relevant to the job I'm applying for. It's not going to tick the box. It's not going to add any value to the job I'm applying for. So you have to be careful. What is it that you want to put them to see immediately that's going to add value for you to be selected for the job? They don't need to see everything. That's what the tailoring actually is about. But I'm happy to support you, and maybe other mentors happy to support and go through that one-to-one session if you have further questions on that.
Okay.
Antonio, I've unmuted you. There was a bit of noise, so I muted you. Apologies, but I've unmuted you now. I think you have a question, Antonio?
Yes, correct, Alim. Thank you. I want to ask regarding the headline. Sylvia told us that it's important also to put keywords about searches from HR, let's say. For example, if I want to show me for a project management rule, should be better to put like project management keywords. But if I'm not in the position of project manager yet, how can I manage that?
Okay, great. Alim, do you want to cover that one?
Yeah, I can. So if I've understood, in your headline of LinkedIn, so like the main headline where your name is in that top section, as well as in your about section, you should absolutely put project management related keywords in there, even if you don't have them right now, but you're going for that role. But the way you would put it in terms of being clever about it, you would use words like interest in, knowledge of. It doesn't have to show that you have experience. So it's not that you're lying, because that's obviously key. You can't lie, you don't want to lie, but you need to put keywords still where the recruiters can find you. Now they're going to find you because you've put Prince 2, for example. Let me give you a more specific example. Say you're going to study Prince 2, okay, but you haven't done it. But a recruiter may be searching for Prince 2. So in your profile, you can state, plan to study Prince 2 in 2020. So you're not lying. You've put there you plan to study Prince 2 in 2020, but if the recruiter is searching for the keyword Prince 2, they're going to find you. So it's just playing the game, right?
Okay.
It could also be sometimes, Antonio, you could say project management certified, IT focused, so just summarize it in a way that you can summarize and you want to position, but at least you've got that word there, project management. So again, try to look at jobs, see what are the jobs they'll be searching, what the relevance you have. You don't have to lie and say, I'm a project manager. So by all means, we're not saying that. But what is it that you've done around project management and why you think that you're suitable? Why do you think that they should consider you as a project manager? That should be the key word that you utilize your headline.
Okay, so I can put my normal job title that I have and then play with the words to show my skills in project management, let's say.
Correct.
And have the keywords. Okay.
Thank you, Antonio. Any other questions right now for Sylvia before she moves on? Anyone else?
Hi, I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we are applying for any roles and they're asking for references, okay? So I'm a freelancer. Let us suppose I finish the role and I come back from that project. So every time when they're asking the references and the initial stages, and we don't know whether that role going to be, I mean, we are going to filter for that role or not. Is it a good idea giving them the references? Because these are the manager's details we are giving them and putting on the CV. Is it a good idea putting on the CV the references?
I would suggest be careful about putting your manager's references. You can always, best advice would be that to put references upon request. So if you've got a really good relationship and your manager knows that you're freelance and you'd be asking them, they can potentially write one generic letter that you could always share and date it with the requesting hiring managers. But you shouldn't put them in your CV, if I understand your question correctly, because sometimes people use those names to actually hire your managers.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah.
You might be creating competition there, so you might have different people.
They have written. No, sorry. They have written on the LinkedIn. Can I mention to them that you can refer my LinkedIn profile instead of going for every time to manager? I can say them that you can refer my LinkedIn for references, isn't it?
So you see, there are different references. If you've already been made an offer and now doing the reference check, you have to provide the reference and name. So, okay. However, before the offer was made to you, if they want to validate different things, you could say that, you know, at the offer stage, you'd be happy to share the details of your references. Once that we're moving to, and it's becoming more serious. But for now, I have many recommendations on my LinkedIn. Please utilize that. And it's more conversation, understanding what is it that they're looking for. But if recruiter asking you for reference before you've been interviewed, etc., I would suggest not to share that and understand, you know, the reasoning behind that.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
So there may be more questions, but we'll hopefully have time at the end as well. So let's stop there and give you a chance, Sylvia, to go through your next slide.
Okay, great. So, oops, I have the wax. The next slide is we're going to focus about the interviews. So what I decided to do is to go through the what are do's and don'ts in for both phone and video interview. It's so important that you choose a very quiet spot. Okay, if you are in a family or sharing your house or flat with someone, make sure that, you know, it's quiet, no one can disturb you, and there's no noise around, because in a meeting you can have a noise, everyone understands, but when you're in the interview, all the nerves and everything, it will add another distraction. So you make sure that you are free of distractions. Another thing you need to do is prepare all the documents you have to. Make sure you have the copy of the job description, printed or available. I would advise printed, and I'll go through that in a minute. Have a copy of your resume in front, because they'll be going through and make sure that you are consistent with what you're saying in your resume. List of talking points for this interview, for interview questions. So what is it that you're going to ask? And some of the things might be already covered, have a many list of questions, so you're not at the end saying that, okay, you've covered all the questions, I have no questions. Surely you should have some questions. List of important information about the company that you want to share with them. And do your research on Glassdoor, what the company does, research about the values and the culture in the organization, sort of questions that you probably should put in your list of questions if you haven't got that clarity about what the culture and the values of the company are from their website. Also, look up your interviewer on LinkedIn. Do a bit of research, and every hiring manager likes that. Oh, you've done research, you understand who they are, how relevant they could be to your job, what part of the job, when you're answering their questions, they can understand and relate to, what areas they might not relate to because they're not familiar with that. And so it'll help you to position your interview in the right mindset. And then obviously you need to have your phone if you're doing phone interview, or your computer if you're using any software for a video interview. And if you're doing a phone interview, make sure that you're sitting in a reliable place for reception and coverage. If you're doing video interview, you must make sure that you test your video conferencing software, whether it's Skype, Zoom, whatever you're using. And you must make sure that if you're using your phone or your computer, must make sure that you turn off all the notifications. So no Facebook notifications coming up, no alerts, no messaging, because it's quite distracting for yourself. So the other key things about both phone and video interviews is to learn to pause and silence. So important that if you have a point, you're talking about something, you give your interviewer a chance to talk and think and chime in, ask questions, and make sure that it's dialogue rather than monologue. So that's so key to give them a chance to chime in. Now, I want to, in this part, Abdul, I think you asked a question earlier about when they ask me a question, how do I answer? So it's so important when you start an interview, at the first thing when you start an interview, whether it's phone or video interview, you might be asked, so tell me a little bit about yourself, okay? So many mistakes people do at all levels, including from graduate, very senior executive level, that people go on and start talking about their CV. You might take half an hour because you've got so much, you're so passionate about what you do, you're so excited, you think that you've covered this, what you do in the current job, what you've been doing before, when you started, you graduated, etc. They are not, they've seen your CV, okay? They know what you've been doing. When they ask you that question, make sure, what is it that you want them to know? First impression, what is the most relevant? That's what you need to be prepared. Be prepared for that question in advance. So, it is important that what you want, it will depend from interview to interview, whether you start from maybe your degree, your qualifications, certifications are important. You want to start from that and strengthen it. Or it might be that your current job is relevant. It might be your volunteering job is relevant and currently you're not working, you're doing a lot of volunteering. You want to stress that this is what I do. And I'm a passionate and show your track record, what you've been doing. So it is, maybe you should take 5 minutes as a summary as a maximum, but make sure you don't go through your CV one by one because they've seen it. They want to see how you're going to present yourself. In terms of, now we move on into a video phone interview separately. For phone interview, some of you may have experienced recently, it's important that you smile, and now they can't see you smiling, but it will make you come across as friendly and positive, and engaging. So you need to have a pen and paper. Do not use computer because it's always phone interview. They don't see me. I can type in, because typing and clicking on laptop is quite distracting. So please make sure that you do not have any distractions. You take notes and no distracting laptop and keyboard noises. For the video interview, I already covered that you need to get familiar with the technology, so you can test it with a friend or family to make sure that it's working ahead of your interview. So there's different platforms some organizations use, and I know that one of the other ones is HireVue. It's quite an interesting tool where you just click on the link like Zoom, but you can also record on-demand interviews if any of you experience. But there's quite a lot of people. And HireVue software, actually in advance, you can ask recruiter to say that, can we test it? You can ask, if you've been asked to join in a particular software, make sure that you get back to your recruiter, say, I'd like to test to make sure that it's working. So a lot of interviews being cancelled because the interviewees are not able to connect using that particular software because they're not familiar. Choose the best space for your video interview. Make sure that you've got the right background. It could be just plain white wall or a photo frame, etc. Make sure the areas that can be seen on your camera are clutter-free. Make sure you've got the right posture, because again, it will provide a good impression about yourself. Look at the camera more than the screen, because when you look at the screen, they might be thinking that you're reading from something. So look at the camera, and it will also create eye contact, something that you'd be giving them anyway when you were having face-to-face interviews. So it's important that you look in the camera to get that impression. So we've talked about eliminating distraction. I would say practice ahead of time and double check. So double check goes back again to technology, practicing ahead of time, as well as testing your software, but also preparing with some of the commonly asked questions and list of questions you're going to ask, and about the job, about the interviewer, about the company. Okay, so as part of this, I've created also what else hiring managers might be looking for, apart from how you prepared, how you present yourself, because they form an impression about you immediately, is how to position your answers. So I would like you to take away a method that we call SAR method. So many of you are probably familiar, but we don't think of it when we are under the pressure. So remember, situation, action, and result. If you are asked a particular question, make sure that you answer using that methodology. So you'll give an understanding on how you work, what's your style, how do you do it. So what you can do to prepare for that, you need to know that there are some commonly asked questions, interview topics they'll cover, and I've listed some of them. You probably will be asked, what's your biggest strengths or weakness? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? How could your current boss describe you? You know, what makes you stand out? Why do you want to work here? These are so common. And I'm not saying that they'll ask all the questions, but you'll definitely get at least 1 or 2 or 3 maybe. Tell me about the time when. It's so common and situational type of questions. So you can prepare different scenarios. So let's pick one of them. If you were asked what's your biggest strength or weakness, if you want to say that I'm organized, it's such a simple standard answer. How else can you say that you're organized? Think a situation where, because of your being organized, because of that skill, you save the day. So you can say, I'm organized, and there was actually recently and you can talk about the situation, what action you took, what resulted. Very short, very brief. You don't need to go into a 5-10 minutes conversation. It needs to be a very brief answer. And the other thing they need to know about you is that you're knowledgeable about the job. So remember, when we're talking about relevance, your current job, what you're doing, or maybe you're volunteering you're doing, and relevance to the job you're applying for. It could be a relevant industry, but the concept of what you're doing is quite similar. That you know about the organization culture and values. Quite a lot of people come to the interview, they have nothing about the organization, and they're applying so many jobs that they're not even bothered to, okay, they know it's Microsoft. I know everything about Microsoft. Why do I need to do research? But you'll be surprised when you actually go and look into carefully, you'll find different cultural, different about the organization culture and their values and their vision. And to be able to say that in the interview, it actually will put you ahead of other competitors. And make sure you ask the right questions, not about when do I start, when am I going to hear back, and how soon you want this job. Ask the questions that are relevant to the job, for the organization. I'm repeating myself, but and I used this example yesterday in the session as well. Recently, there was a case, we had 4 shortlisted strong candidates, and for a big mining job. And the hiring manager couldn't make a decision. He said, well, look, I've interviewed 10 people. I like this 4. I want them all go through it. He knows that he can only hire 1. But the next step after the interview was to go through assessment. So we can only select 2 people to go through the assessment, and we'll offer the role to 1. And you know what? We have to choose based on who asked the right questions in the interview. So all of them are, competent people. They can do the job. and they have track record. And but you just remember that, and you need to remember that it's a competitive market. There's quite a lot of people who are out of job. Even people who are currently in job, they're insecure about the job, so they'll be applying. There's many people, so you need to really do your research and prepare well ahead of the time. So that's it, my key top tips. And so thank you for listening. And if any other questions, I'm happy to answer with added support.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. And we're just on time. Okay, so really, you know, we're meant to be ending now, but there's at least one question which has come through the chat, which we'll pick up, and then we'll quickly see if there are any other questions from anyone that they want to tell us verbally. Okay, so the question in the chat was, if I have gaps in my CV, either because, you know, I only want to work 6 months a year, or, you know, whatever the reason is, if I have gaps in my CV spanning perhaps several years, how do I account for them so it doesn't look like, you know, so that the hiring manager, the recruiter, doesn't have a bad impression of me? Because it might be deliberate. Maybe I only want to work 6 months a year. How do I fill in the gaps?
You don't need to fill in the gaps with different stories, but if you need to be honest and show why you have gaps, and rather than leaving blank, you know, you need to show you took career break, it was a family situation, you had elderly parent. There are reasons why you have gaps. As a freelance contractor, you probably will have more gaps than anyone else, because you can't, you've been hired for 6 months, and it's understandable for interim type of roles. But if you're constantly a permanent role, you have to show the gaps why you're having. Even as a contractor, if you've been having gap for 2 years, that's a long time to be out of contract. So make sure that you cover that and explain what the reason of the gap in your CV.
Okay. Thank you, Sylvia. And I know 1 or 2 people may have to drop, so if you do, please do. But is there anyone else who has a question for Sylvia that they'd like to raise? And remember, you're on mute if you need to unmute yourself. Okay, it looks like there may not be any, and we're on time, as we said. So thank you very much, Sylvia. Thank you for all of your contributions. Hope you benefited from it, and see you on the next sessions. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.